Well, welcome everyone to another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. We had a couple-week break while I was on vacation, but now we are back and we are ready to talk about the issue that is captivating the nation's capital this week. That, of course, is the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran and what role the United States may eventually play in how this all ends. And so joining me to talk about that is David Brody, CBN News chief political analyst, and Dan Andros, host of the CBN podcast Quick Start. Guys, a very, very interesting week here on this front. And just to catch everybody up on where we are right now with this, Trump told senior aides late on Tuesday that he has approved attack plans for Iran. Here, as now we are in day 6 of this ongoing conflict between these two longstanding rivals, but was holding off to see if Tehran would abandon its nuclear program. We, of course, remember that the Trump administration has been in negotiations with Iran to try and end their nuclear program. But Israel last week, after it appeared that the negotiations were breaking down, attacked Iran after seemingly months and maybe even years of preparation with people on the inside and drones and everything else. So truly breathtaking scale of attacks Israel on Iran to try and get at their nuclear program. So David, as we sit here late on Thursday morning, the United States has still not decided one way or the other whether they're going to act militarily and assist Israel in their ending of Iran's nuclear weapons militarily. How do you see this shaking out here over the next 24 to 48 hours? Are we going to get in?
Yes. Look, if I'm going to kind of give percentages, I'm thinking 90%, 95%, maybe even close to 100, but nothing is guaranteed for sure. I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when at this point. Because look, the truth of the matter is, if you were dealing with some sort of sane regime in Iran, it might be one thing to say, hey, wow, we're in trouble here. Maybe we should negotiate. They're not going to negotiate. We know this. They're not willing to negotiate and give up their nuclear weapons. And so because of that, they're going to probably just end up giving up their whole regime and power, because that's what's going to end up happening. So no, I don't see it any other way. I think Trump is trying to give peace a chance to a degree, but I think it's more about getting the right war footing over in the Middle East and making sure everything's in place before they actually do what they need to do, John.
Yeah, Dan, what's your sense of this?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the definition of if your definition of being engaged is looser. I mean, we pretty much already are.
Yeah.
I mean, President Trump already said, many times in his Truth Social post that we have control over the skies. Like, we're assisting. Ted Cruz said that in his interview with Tucker Carlson, that we are helping and we're assisting. So, I mean, we don't know exactly what that level is. And it was interesting because on the day of the first attack by Israel on Iran, I think it was Marco Rubio who said, well, this is a unilateral action by Israel, the United States not, and I don't know how many people actually believe that. He was just trying to potentially say that so that there was no reprisals by Iran on American troops stationed overseas, different places. So I think we, to an extent, are probably very likely already involved in this, but the ramping up of that where we are directly doing strikes and not just assisting, I think, agree with David. It's a matter of when, not if.
Well, and I think one of the things that we don't really, the United States would get involved here because we have these bunker busting bombs that would really get at these facilities deep in the mountains. I think there was a facility called Fordo in Iran where one of their top nuclear enrichment sites is buried very, very deep underground, and the United States.
Yeah, 200.
I'm sorry.
200 feet underground. Yeah.
200 feet. Okay, so yeah, exactly. I mean, and you don't get to that level just with the bunker busters that Israel has. It's the United States is the only one that has some of these weapons. And I was reading this week that the B-2s that you would need to fly over there, it's a 32-hour flight that they would have to take, and then to refuel and all these different things. Like it's a real massive undertaking to do this, David. And so not all of the American people are necessarily on board with this. There was a Washington Post poll that came out yesterday. 45% of Americans are in favor of are against striking Iran. 25% are in favor of it. The rest are still kind of, waiting to see exactly. They're not sure exactly as far as what to do yet. But I guess, what is the danger of the United States getting involved here? I mean, it would seem as though they've got Iran on the run. Trump has said they have control of the skies over Iran. What's the danger? How could this go out of control?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, before addressing the danger, some of the polling you're suggesting, yeah, I've seen that polling. I've also seen polling just recently in the last 24 hours that 7 in 10 Americans approve of strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, U.S. strikes on nuclear facilities. So, I'm not quite sure exactly where the American public is going to come down on this ultimately, but it seems like they have definitely a lot more interest and support for unilaterally just kind of going in there surgically, doing what they need to do, and then getting out. But then that raises the second part of your question, which is the danger aspect to it. And this is where the isolationist crowd comes in, the MAGA isolationist crowd that believes that Donald Trump would lead us into a forever war and boots on the ground and nation building and yada, yada, yada. That's utterly ridiculous for many reasons. First of all, Donald Trump, look, call him whatever you want, even if you can't stand Trump. One thing Trump's not going to do is get this country into any sort of forever war. He's railed against it. It's been part of the MAGA platform, if you will, for over 10 years now. And honestly, he's been talking about that for 20 plus years. So this idea that all of a sudden we're going to have boots on the ground in Iran is ridiculous. This idea that we're going to have nation building like we did in Afghanistan and other places is just not, it's just not going to happen under Trump's watch. It just won't. It just won't. I mean, that's not his space. That's not his headspace for sure. Even if issues and something dictates certain things on the ground, that is not where he's going to be whatsoever. And look, I think if there's going to be any nation building in Iran, it's going to come from the people of Iran. That's the nation building that needs to take place. And so, what's the danger? Back to the isolationist crowd. I think the danger is that we're going to get entrapped in some sort of Middle East war. We've seen this rodeo before, they'll say, and we don't want anything to do with it. Now, having said that, I think there's a majority of Americans that don't want to be there. I mean, let's be honest. Unless you're Lindsey Graham and maybe some uber neocon, do you really want boots on the ground in Iran? Do you really want to force regime change and do nation building? I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, anybody, anybody with an asterisk, maybe John Bolton, maybe Lindsey Graham, maybe Tom Cotton, maybe some other neocons. But other than that, I don't think people want that. Ted Cruz, who talked the other day to Tucker Carlson, I know we'll get to that in a moment, he doesn't want that either. So that's kind of a little bit of the contours of the way I see it.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, and in terms of nation building, I think you're right. I think David's 100% right. And Dan, I wanted to ask you about the fact that Trump has said this week that they know where the Ayatollah Khomeini is, that, he could bomb the Ayatollah if he wanted to, but doesn't want to do that right now. I mean, the argument that some of the folks who are most strongly in favor of getting involved militarily and seeing this through is they're looking at this as a once in a lifetime opportunity, perhaps, that Israel has done real damage to Iran's air defense systems, their nuclear program, and that this is the opportunity to take out the Ayatollahs, to allow the Iranian people to take back their country like it was before 1979. And this may be the one and only shot, and that this could be a legacy type thing for Donald Trump, something that would be good for the nation, good for the international community, and good for his legacy. That's the argument, I think, that some within his circle are using to try and get him to go ahead militarily and to really assist Israel more in terms of bombs and planes and everything else. I agree. I don't think we're going to see troops, but it sounds like that there's an argument to be made there to get in a little bit more aggressively here.
Yeah, and I think it's a tough line to walk here, because you have to have some threat in order to get a nation to do what you want. But at the same time, like I don't think the popular part is toppling the government and, again, trying to assist in some sort of nation building, because that hasn't seemed to have worked out very well in the past few tries of doing that. So, but you have to walk this line if you're President Trump to carry some sort of leverage, to carry some sort of threat, or else Iran is going to continue to do what they do. And I think the popular position, as mentioned, is striking the targets. I mean, we all saw Top Gun Maverick. I mean, that's pretty much, I think the target they went into was probably supposed to be that facility that you just mentioned, John, buried in the mountains. And then they, fly that incredible mission. But everybody cheered at that one. So I think people are kind of on board with that action. But then anything for the toppling thing, it gets dicey, because then if things go wrong and they go sour, then America's going to be to blame for that. And then maybe you get some people turning against you, and then things can go bad. You get reprisals on American interests overseas. So that's where it gets dicey. I don't think that's where people want to go. And again, do we want to get into this situation where we're just assassinating leaders we don't like? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem great.
I mean, to me, it's the old strike while the iron is hot, and it's never been hotter than now. I mean, you got dominance in the air. I mean, if America's going to go in with the B-52s or the B-2s, however they want to do it, they're going to have no resistance. So, I mean, if you were ever going to do it, now is the time. And that's why I get back to 90%. By the way, one other thing, not to sound like Tucker Carlson here for a second, because let me be honest, if I can take my political cap off here for a second and just talk as David Brody, personal citizen, I'm as pro-Israel as they come. Okay, so let me just be very clear. But let me raise this, guys. I mean, Netanyahu said 30 plus years ago that Iran was months away. 15, 20 years ago, he's talking weeks away. So that was 30 years ago, 15 years ago. Now it's days away. My point is that we've been hearing this from Netanyahu for the last 30 years. It's going to raise some skepticism from the isolationist crowd, and quite frankly, even just folks that aren't paying much attention, to go, well, wait a minute. If it was such a threat 30 years ago, and you're saying that they were months away, so you were wrong back then? Because if they were months away, why didn't they use it? Go ahead, Dan. I
think the answer to that criticism, David, is just that this is what Israel's been doing, is stopping that. So yes, they make advancements. Israel goes in and, oh, whoops, there was an explosion at the nuke plant there, and it sets them back.
But Dan, how did they go in exactly? Did I miss the last 30 years? Have they been attacking Iran's nuclear power plants with aerial jets?
Not with aerial jets, but they've been they do things, sabotage on the ground, getting Mossad agents in there. I don't have all of the past reports right in front of me, but I remember reporting over the years many times on Israel doing operation. Now I don't know about 30 years ago, but listen, I think it's ongoing that Mossad, Israel, is actively working to keep Iran from getting that nuclear weapon. So I think that would be the answer to that criticism, is just that's exact. Yes, they keep trying to get it. Iran does, but Israel keeps taking measures to slow them down.
Right, but hasn't gone for the whole enchilada. Got it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, and I think one aspect of this whole story is the Tulsi Gabbard comments from last week. The director of national intelligence was speaking before a congressional committee and said again just last week that that Iran was not close to getting a nuclear weapon, and that the Ayatollah. Hey, that's just Donald Trump had to respond to that this week and essentially say, no, I don't agree with my DNI. I think they are close, and that's kind of played into some of what we're discussing here is how close are they? Even the U.S. intelligence community seems, or at least the woman who's been speaking as the head of the Director of National Intelligence, is saying something very different than the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, I mean, that was back in March, if I'm not mistaken. So that would have been April, May, June, about 3 months ago, rather than last week.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, listen, it's all running together at this point, for sure. But yeah, I think there's going to be potential fallout from that. We'll see how all of this plays out. But Tulsi Gabbard is definitely not on the go ahead and attack Iran's nuclear sites. Absolutely not. She may resign over this rather than Trump forcing her out. We'll see what happens about that.
And that kind of also now transitions us into the next part of this conversation, which is, and David, you've alluded to this a little bit, the conversation inside the MAGA world. Trump supporters who, again, as part of Trump's platform, America First, staying out of forever wars, the criticism of previous presidents who got involved in wars, and Trump saying they were all kind of wag the dog scenarios to distract from domestic political issues here. In this case, now you have a number of his supporters who are vehemently against any kind of U.S. military involvement, and then you've got some folks who want to go along with the president, who feel the president has earned the trust of his supporters on whatever he decides to do in Iran, and it's kind of coming at loggerheads. Some of them are just podcasters and people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and you have some members of Congress like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are coming out staunchly opposed to any involvement in bombing Iran. And then, of course, you had this big brouhaha with Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson on Carlson's podcast where they were going back and forth. Carlson challenging Cruz. He doesn't know how many people are live what the population of Iran is. He doesn't know what the makeup of the country is racially or religiously. And how can you go bomb a country when you don't know all those different kinds of things? That was eye-opening to a lot of people. We haven't seen those kinds of interactions from MAGA-friendly politicians and MAGA-friendly podcasters, broadcasters, influencers, and it seems like it's happening, more each day with this Iran situation, David. So my question to you is this something that could splinter Iran? Is it driving a wedge? I mean, could splinter MAGA? Is it driving a wedge?
Yes, no doubt. This is one of those stories that, rather than the media concocting some sort of drama about a MAGA split, there's a split. Now, what is the percentage? 85-15, 60-40, 70? I don't know exactly. Probably more like 80-20. In other words, I think most of MAGA is good with what is going on here. I would say even 20% might be high. It might be 10-15% of MAGA is frustrated. But this idea that the forever wars is like the central tenet of MAGA, no. I mean, I'm not quite. Now, for them it is. For that 15 to 20% is. But that's not the central tenet of MAGA. It's part of MAGA. It's not the central tenet, and I think that's the difference. And by the way, on a separate note, shame on Tucker Carlson. Can we just say it? Can we just say it right now? On so many different levels, shame on him. First of all, the tactics in that interview. Listen, don't play the gotcha game, okay? If you're such a free thinker and you're such an intellectual type guy, then you don't need to play the gotcha game with Ted Cruz. But he purposely did that, and I don't like that tactic at all. I've done many interviews. I've never used it. I don't think it works. I think it just is, it makes you look bad. And then number two, what a smug, elitist, arrogant way that Tucker Carlson was conducting that interview like he's on high. It's funny because he always rails against the elites, and then he looked elitist himself. And then the last part is he's got to lose the laugh. That laugh is just maniacal. I mean, it's kind of like out of Friday the 13th, Dan Andros.
Well, I wasn't a fan of the gotcha tactics as well. It felt to me phony that Tucker Carlson was shocked that Ted Cruz didn't know the specific population, as if, and then he transitioned. This is why I feel like it's phony, is because he probably doesn't know you throw out a thing and a question of a specific thing, and if he knows it, great, you move on. If he doesn't, then he acts shocked and horrified that he doesn't know the specific population, as if Ted Cruz doesn't know it's tens of millions of people, and as if Ted Cruz, as you're a senator of the United States and you don't know what the population is and you want to bomb them, as if it's Ted Cruz's responsibility, a one senator, that he's going to be in charge of evacuation plans or whatever else, that somehow that this would get overlooked. And that negates him from being able to have an opinion on Iran. And which, by the way, he knows the demographics. He was starting to answer that question before he realized this was a fool's errand, and I'm just going to turn the table back on him. So yeah, I didn't like the tactic either.
Yeah, and by the way, let's be clear. Tucker Carlson was Googling that information, 30 minutes before the interview.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like he knew that off the top of his head. Give me a break.
Well, and that was Worldometer, by the way, which is a reputable place that has that. But then there's other estimates out there that have 90 million. So if we go by the other estimate of 90 million, is Tucker Carlson now unqualified to comment on Iran because he was 2 million off by one estimate and he used a different one? I mean, the whole thing was just ridiculous. And the same thing with the Genesis,
yes,
12-3. I mean, again, now listen, Ted Cruz should have known the answers to these
yes, he
questions.
should have. Yes,
he should. And Ted usually does. Usually he's pretty good with those sorts of things, but he didn't this time. And particularly not knowing even it was in Genesis. But again, Tucker knew this, and he knows this is a common position, an evangelical Christian position, that they follow Genesis 12:3, and they believe that to be literal. We're going to bless the nation of Israel. So he knows this. So to act shocked and mortified that this is some crazy view that no one, it was just it's disingenuous to me is how it came across.
He should have known Genesis 12:3. There's Numbers 24:9 as well. I mean, and it talks about it all the time. I don't think he was as eloquent as he needed to be there for sure. But, to me, it gets to a larger issue, John, which is and not that we need to get into that to this right now, because this is a whole different podcast and probably not our podcast specifically, but that's replacement theology, right? I mean, that now we're into replacement theology, and now we're going down the Candace Owens rabbit trail, or rabbit hole, excuse me, where these folks just go down this place so much that, forget the Jews, forget Israel, forget everything. Oh, and now I'm an anti-Semite. At the end of that rabbit hole. I think that's the dirty little secret, which really isn't much of a secret, but if you really put two and two together, that's where it leads, guys. That's where it leads.
Yeah.
Well, we've reached the portion of the show where I now ask David about Iran's gross domestic product. David, I would imagine you have this information at your fingertips.
Zero.
Dan, you're up. Chief exports are up for you next, Dan. So I'll give you 2 minutes to think about this.
Google it. Okay, I'll Google it.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes.
And then I can be smug about it afterwards when I know.
You don't know the gross domestic product. Well, I just want to finish things up by getting not a prediction from you guys, but just a gut feeling how you see this playing out. Let's just say over the course of the next week. By the time we meet again next week, Dan Andros, kind of how do you see this thing playing out? Where are we in this? And is this even still the number one topic of discussion next week when we come back come back to chat? It seems to me it probably won't be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but it does feel like it will be, because like David was saying, like I do think this is a real split. I mean, because Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, even I think Matt Walsh is on the Isolationists. These are big voices in the conservative sphere, and so you wonder how many people are going to go along with this purely isolationist sort of idea. And I will just say too, I think President Trump is navigating this very well. I think he's taking a very reasonable position, which is kind of what David was saying, like, hey, we cannot, Iran cannot have a nuke. I mean, they calling us the great state. They will use it. They will use it on people. And when they use a nuke, for all the people that are isolationists and don't want to get anything, well, guess what? When nukes start flying, everything changes. And Iran is someone who they've expressed a desire to wipe Israel off the map. So they're already, shooting and have attacked Israel through proxies many, many times. So clearly they've shown a willingness to do this. So for everyone who wants to be isolationist at this point and put your head in the sand, well, what happens when nukes start flying from Iran to Israel? Well, now you're forced to do something because we would be next. So I think Trump's navigating this, I think, well. And so I mean, I hate to predict where these things go because it's always surprising to me, but I do think since Trump is on a good line with this, I think more people will kind of fall in line to where he is, because he's not on the forever war train like David was saying. And that's sort of the straw man argument that everybody puts up there. It's like, you want to take a military action? Well, I guess we're just going to, be there forever. Well, no, that's not what he's saying. So hopefully, as people see what President Trump is saying, if that's the course he sticks on, I think more people will fall in line.
Here's the nuance. He is not for forever wars, but he's also not an isolationist. So It's a lazy narrative to say that he's an isolationist. I like the way Ted Cruz termed it in the interview when it came up. I watched the whole 2 hours, by the way, which was honestly quite fascinating. It was like a Bravo, I was watching Bravo, and like Teresa was going to turn over the table or something like that. But what he called Trump's foreign policy, and I really like this, he called Trump a non-interventionist hawk. And I think that's exactly right. I think, Trump is situational. He's transactional. You're never quite sure exactly what he's going to do, but it's all based on the situation at hand and the card he's dealt. So he sees it that way. And that's why I think he's waiting to see if Iran will come to the table, because remember, he's always art of the deal. Well, Iran, he thinks, in a sane world, back to sanity, in a sane world, someone that has no cards to play, like he told Zelensky, you got no cards to play. Same thing in Iran. He's thinking, well, I got no cards to play. They have to come to the table. No, they don't. No, they don't. Not when sanity has been thrown out the window, and they're doing river to the sea and debt to America and all of that. So that's the part that I think Trump understands, but at the same time, I think he wants to give kind of John Lennon, give peace a chance, all of that. As it relates to where this all goes, John, in answer to your question, I think next week there will be no more Fordo. I think that the United States will get involved and do surgical strikes. And then I think the story we're talking about next week is a vacuum. What fills and who fills that vacuum as to what happens next, the ... to the story. And that's where I think the forever war crowd, or the no forever war crowd, and the Candace Owens and the Tucker Carlsons and others are really going to be basically more vocal, and the New York Times and others will be running stories about how this is the end of Trump's presidency because, MAGA is over, and there's going to be a vacuum because we don't know what Iran's future is going to look like. And I think that's not going to look good for Trump in the interim, but I do think that eventually it will somehow get settled. So real quick, not to just kind of trip on myself and my words here, but to be clear, when I say the interim, there are two interims. I think when those bombs go down, the B-52s, and they go in, I think the interim will be positive for Trump. I think he'll get the positive headlines for taking out Iran's nuclear facilities. I think that interim will be good in the next 24 to 48 hours of when it happens. But the next interim after that, in that same week period, I think we'll start to see that vacuum go, okay, well, what now? And that's where it can get a little more murky.
Yeah, we do live in a world right now where hyperbole is seemingly the standard the standard statements, right? I mean, we say something is the most or the biggest or the this or the that, and every week everything is something the most important. But in terms of the President Trump's 2 terms in office, this could end up being the most consequential week of his 2 presidencies, depending on how things go. And we'll see what happens when we get together next week and we discuss this again.
I'm sorry, one last thing that I just wanted to say. This no forever war crowd said, we didn't vote for this. We didn't vote for this. Well, first of all, vote for what? We're not in a no forever war or forever war at this point, number one. And number two, so if you say you didn't vote for this, well, hold on. Donald Trump for the last 10 years in MAGA has been saying Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. So you voted for that knowing that he said that all the time. So, this idea that, he wasn't clear and he's reversing his position, you still voted for him knowing that that's how he felt. So give me a break.
Yeah, no, and I just want to throw in one other thing on the isolationist sort of policy. And I think where Trump is standing, why I'm saying he's navigating this well, is where I think the fatal flaw in the pure isolationist philosophy is that you lose all leverage across the world everywhere. They know, okay, if these guys are pure isolationists, they know you will never do anything. And so they have free reign to go do whatever it is they want. And they just, then they're going to be like thumbing their nose at you. Like, oh, I don't care. Oh, really? You guys don't like it? Sorry. You're not going to act. And Trump is, I think, in a position where they do know that he will do things. But like you said, it's like that transactional. It's like, we're going to stop you from getting a nuke. We're not getting in a forever war. So you're right. He's been very consistent on that position for years.
Oh, by the way, sorry, I know we don't need to wrap it up, but let me just say one thing. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, when you're on the side with Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, that's not a good day. That's not a good day for you. So let's just be clear. And we can get into this later, but I see a circle here, right? I mean, there's conservatives, right? But then there's these anarchists, and that's what they are. They're anarchists on the far right that go around the circle. So you have conservative, and all of a sudden now, whoa, we're getting into crazy territory. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, we're getting into and look what you've done. You come around the circle and look where Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and others on the left are, because the anarchist crowd, the isolationist type crowd, at least on foreign policy, sees things very similar to the far left in this country. And that's the circle there. So I think that's important to understand.
Gentlemen, we'll leave it there for this week. Dan Andros, David Brody, thank you for joining me once again on Navigating Trump 2.0.
Thanks, John.